This is VOA News. Via remote, I'm Marissa Melton. The velocity of war in Ukraine has increased with both sides after strategic gains. AP correspondent Charles de Ledesma has a report.
Russia's military has pounded residential areas across Ukraine, claiming gains as Ukrainian forces press a counter-offensive to try to take back an occupied southern region, striking the last working bridge over a river in the Russian-occupied Kherson region. Ukrainian authorities say a Russian rocket attack on the city of Kramatorsk killed 3 people and wounded over 12 others on Friday. Russian troops and rebels are seeking to seize Ukrainian areas north and west of the city of Donetsk to expand the separatist self-proclaimed republic, but the Ukrainian military says its forces had prevented an overnight advance. I'm Charles de Ledesma.
A UN-chartered vessel being loaded with grain is set to transport the first shipment of humanitarian aid food from Ukraine to Africa. The vessel, which docked in Ukraine Friday, will carry 23,000 tons of grain bound for Ethiopia. It's part of a UN-backed plan to move grain trapped by Russia's war on Ukraine and to help relieve a global food crisis. Previous ships with grain were allowed to leave Ukraine under the deal, but were not humanitarian aid. Their cargoes had been purchased by other nations or vendors. Oleksandr Kubrakov, Ukraine's Minister of Infrastructure, wrote in a tweet that the newly docked vessel would also supply grain for Somalia and Kenya, which are also facing the worst drought in 4 decades. In Kenya, veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga led Kenya's presidential race. Official election results showed on Saturday, pushing Deputy President William Ruto into second place. This is VOA News. In the United States, the Southern Baptists say the denomination is being investigated by the Justice Department. AP correspondent Mike Gracia has this story.
The Southern Baptist Convention's Executive Committee said in a statement Friday that several entities of the denomination are under investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice. The statement said the investigation is related to clergy sex abuse. Earlier this year, an SBC sex abuse task force released a report from outside consultant Guidepost Solutions following a 7-month independent investigation. The report said denominational leaders had mishandled sex abuse claims and mistreated victims. After the report was released, the SBC voted in June to track pastors and other church workers who were credibly accused of sex abuse. I'm Mike Gracia.
Poland's environment minister says laboratory tests following a mass fish die-off have detected high salinity levels but no mercury in the Oder River. That means the mystery continues as to what killed tons of fish in Central Europe. The minister said analyses of river samples taken in both Poland and Germany revealed the elevated salt levels. She says comprehensive toxicology studies are still underway in Poland. The Oder River runs from the Czech Republic and along the border from Poland and Germany before flowing into the Baltic Sea. 1 person was killed early Saturday at a music festival in Spain when high winds caused a stage to collapse. Among the dozens injured at the Medusa festival, 3 suffered serious trauma, according to emergency officials. Festival organizers said on Facebook that they are devastated and saddened. The DJ on the main stage said on Instagram that the collapse took place toward the end of his set from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. The DJ, Miguel Serna, said he is still in shock. Performances at the multi-day event have been suspended. Sri Lanka has granted port access for a controversial Chinese research vessel, the foreign ministry said, despite neighboring India's concerns that it could spy on New Delhi's military installations. The Yuanwang 5 is described as a research and survey vessel by international shipping and analytics sites, but according to Indian media, it's a dual-use spy ship. New Delhi is suspicious of Beijing's increasing presence in the Indian Ocean and its influence in Sri Lanka, seeing both as being firmly within Indian sphere of influence. The Yuanwang 5 was originally due to call at Sri Lanka's Chinese-run Hambantota port on Thursday, only for Colombo to ask Beijing to indefinitely defer the visit following India's objections. Via remote, I'm Marissa Melton. You're listening to VOA News.
This is VOA News. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey. A fire ripped through a packed Coptic Orthodox church during Sunday morning services near Egypt's capital, killing 41 worshippers, including at least 15 children, and injuring 16 others. VOA's Diane Roberts reports.
The church quickly filled with thick black smoke, and witnesses said several trapped congregants jumped from upper floors to escape. The fire blocked an entrance to the church, causing a stampede, they said. Emergency services said they later managed to put out the blaze in the church in the working-class neighborhood of Mbaba. In a statement, the Interior Ministry said a forensic examination showed that the fire began in the second-floor air conditioning as a result of an electrical malfunction. Diane Roberts, VOA News.
A delegation of U.S. lawmakers arrived in Taiwan on Sunday for a two-day trip during which they will meet President Tsai Ing-wen, the second high-level group to visit while there are military tensions between the self-ruled island and China. Beijing, which claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory, has conducted military drills around the island after U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taipei early in August. China has long claimed sovereignty over the island. Taiwan's government rejects China's claims and says the island's people should decide its future. The de facto U.S. Embassy in Taipei said the delegation is being led by a senator who is accompanied by 4 House lawmakers on what is being described as a part of a larger visit to the Indo-Pacific region. Find more on our website, voanews.com. or follow us on the VOA mobile app. This is VOA News. U.S. President Joe Biden on Sunday congratulated India on 75 years of independence and said the United States and India were indispensable partners that would continue to work together to address global challenges in the years ahead. India marks its 75th year of independence on Monday, celebrating the end of British colonial rule in 1947. Quote, the United States joins the people of India to honor its democratic journey, guided by Mahatma Gandhi's enduring message of truth and nonviolence, Biden said in a statement referring to the leader of India's independence movement. Biden also said his country's Indian American community has made the United States a more innovative, inclusive, and stronger nation. Kenya's Deputy President William Ruto has edged ahead in a tight presidential race, according to official results reported by Kenyan media on Sunday, as more riot police were deployed inside the National Election Tallying Center after scuffles and accusations by party agents. It underscores fraying tempers and high tensions within the National Counting Hall as the country waits for official results from last Tuesday's election. In the presidential race, official verified results report Ruto with 51% of the vote ahead of left-leaning opposition leader Raila Odinga, who has 48%. Global oil companies are posting huge profits, AP correspondent Lisa Dwyer reports.
Saudi energy company Aramco says its profits jumped 90% in the second quarter compared to the same time last year. That helped Aramco's half-year earnings to reach nearly $88 billion for the first half of the year. The increase is a boon for the kingdom and the crown prince's spending power, as people around the world pay higher prices at the pump. Major oil companies had a strong quarter last quarter. ExxonMobil booked an unprecedented $17.85 billion in profit. Chevron made a record $11.62 billion, and Shell shattered its own profit record. Aramco says the profits were driven primarily by higher crude oil prices, volumes sold, and higher refining margins. Saudi Arabia's vast oil reserves are among the cheapest to produce in the world. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Recapping our top story, a fire ripped through a packed Coptic Orthodox church during morning services near Egypt's capital, killing 41 worshippers, including at least 15 children, and injuring 16 others. The church quickly filled with thick black smoke Sunday, and witnesses said several trapped congregants jumped from upper floors to escape. Find more at voanews.com. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey. This is VOA News. Reporting by remote, I'm Joe Ramsey. William Ruto was declared the winner of Kenya's close-fought presidential poll on a high day of drama Monday, with violent protest in his defeated rival strongholds, claims of rigging, and a split in the commission that oversaw the vote, as tensions ran high after his narrow victory in the August 9th race against Raila Odinga. The 55-year-old president-elect issued a conciliatory message vowing to work with, quote, all leaders. The dispute will test Kenya's stability after previous elections in the East African political and economic powerhouse were blighted by claims of rigging and vicious bouts of deadly violence. The Taliban is celebrating a year after it took control of Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. AP correspondent Rita Foley reports.
Today, August 15th, wrote the head of a Taliban-run news agency, marks the victory of Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan against America. Retired U.S. Marine William B. was deployed to Afghanistan 4 times. The AP spoke with him a year ago in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
It gets to you because, you have lost dudes over there, and to see all that happen, everything being erased like an Etch-a-Sketch, it's kind of heartbreaking.
So, was it worth it?
Oh, it was worth it 100%. I mean, like the Afghan people themselves, those dudes are amazing. Nicest people you'll ever meet.
Now, a year later, a small group of Taliban fighters marched past the former U.S. Embassy, chanting, "Long live Islam and death to America." I'm Rita Foley.
This is VOA News. Ukraine called for new sanctions on Russia and warned about the consequences of catastrophe at Europe's biggest nuclear plant, where fresh shelling nearby has renewed a blame game between both sides. The World Nuclear Watchdog has warned of disaster if the fighting does not stop. Ukrainian and Russian installed officials have traded accusations over who is responsible for attacks close to the Zaporizhia nuclear plant in southern Ukraine. The International Atomic Energy Agency is seeking access to the plant and has warned of possible disaster. The top UN envoy for Yemen says he's intensifying efforts to achieve an expanded truce between the warring parties that will hopefully lead to the start of talks on a ceasefire and preparations for resuming a Yemeni-led political process. Hans Grunberg told the UN Security Council on Monday the August 2nd agreement by the internationally recognized government and Houthi rebels to a 2-month extension of the truce that began April 2nd continues the longest pause in fighting since Yemen's civil war began in 2014. He warns failure to extend the truce will lead to renewed violence. U.S. health officials say there's more monkeypox vaccine available to states and cities. AP correspondent Lisa Dwyer reports.
U.S. officials now say they are able to ship out more monkeypox vaccine doses than previously planned. That's because of a strategy shift that allows more shots to be drawn from each vial. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services had previously anticipated allowing 221,000 doses to be ordered, but officials now say they will release 442,000 doses to state, local, and territorial health departments. The accelerated release was only possible because U.S. health officials said last week that they would stretch the nation's limited supply of the Jynneos monkeypox vaccine by giving people 1/5 the usual dose injected just under the skin. Previously, each vaccine dose required a full vial injected into deeper tissue. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
Recapping our top story, William Ruto was declared the winner of Kenya's close-fought presidential poll on a day of high drama Monday, with violent protest in his defeated rival stronghold's claims of rigging and a split in the commission that oversaw the vote. As tensions ran high after his narrow victory, the 55-year-old president-elect issued a conciliatory message vowing to, quote, work with all leaders. The dispute will test Kenya's stability after previous elections were scarred by claims of rigging and vicious bouts of deadly violence. Reporting by remote, I'm...
This is VOA News via remote. I'm Tommy McNeil. China has announced more military drills around Taiwan as the self-governing island's president met with another U.S. congressional delegation. The announcement threatened to renew tensions days after a visit by the U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi angered China. Pelosi was the highest-level member of the U.S. government to visit Taiwan in 25 years, and her trip prompted nearly 2 weeks of threatening military exercises by China. Beijing claims Taiwan as its own. In those drills, it fired missiles over the island and sent warplanes and Navy ships across the Taiwan Strait's midline. American and Taiwanese officials have accused China of using Pelosi's visit as a pretext for intimidating moves. China's defense ministry gave no details about the new drills. There's more monkeypox vaccine available to states and cities in the U.S. We get more from AP correspondent Lisa Dwyer.
U.S. officials now say they are able to ship out more monkeypox vaccine doses than previously planned. That's because of a strategy shift that allows more shots to be drawn from each vial. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services had previously anticipated allowing 221,000 doses to be ordered, but officials now say they will release 442,000 doses to state, local, and territorial health departments. The accelerated release was only possible because U.S. health officials said last week that they would stretch the nation's limited supply of the Jynneos monkeypox vaccine by giving people 1/5 the usual dose injected just under the skin. Previously, each vaccine dose required a full vial injected into deeper tissue. I'm Lisa Dwyer.
More at voanews.com. This is VOA News. The Ukrainian military said Monday that it had repelled more than a dozen Russian attacks in the country's east and north, including attempts to advance on key cities in the eastern industrial heartland known as the Donbass. In its regular Facebook update, the military's general staff said Russian troops had attempted to push towards Kramatorsk, one of two major cities in the eastern Donetsk province that remain under Ukrainian control, but they failed completely and chaotically retreated to their previous positions. In the same post, the military said Russian forces had staged an unsuccessful assault on Bakhmut, a strategic town in the Donetsk region whose capture would have paved the way for Russia to take Kramatorsk and the de facto Ukrainian administration capital. The U.S. Justice Department opposes sealing or unsealing the affidavit supporting the FBI search for the president's Florida state. AP correspondent Norman Hall has more details.
A court filing from the U.S. Attorney in Miami and a top Justice Department national security official says the investigation implicates highly classified material, and the affidavit contains sensitive information about witnesses. The government's opposition came in response to court filing by several news organizations seeking to unseal the underlying affidavit the Justice Department submitted when it asked for the warrant to search Trump's estate earlier this month. The government told a federal magistrate judge that prosecutors believe some additional records, including the cover sheet for the warrant and the government's request to seal the document, should now be made public. Norman Hall, Washington.
UN says that its special envoy for Myanmar has traveled to the Southeast Asian nation for the first time since her appointment last October. The trip by Noeleen Heyzer follows the UN Security Council's latest call for an immediate end of all forms of violence and unimpeded humanitarian access in a strife-torn country. The UN spokesman, Stefan Dujarric, said late Monday that Heyzer will focus on addressing the deteriorating situation and immediate concerns, as well as other priority areas of her mandate. He gave no details on whether she would meet with Myanmar's military rulers or the country's imprisoned former leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Migrants were stopped fewer times at the U.S. border with Mexico in July than in June, according to authorities, which is a second straight monthly decline. Flows were still unusually high, particularly among nationalities less affected by Title 42, a pandemic-era rule that denies migrants legal rights to seek asylum on grounds of preventing the spread of COVID-19. Via remote, I'm Tommy McNeil, VOA News.